You're with the Daily Climate Show for the next 10 minutes. Coming up, the new Chancellor scales back energy help, but could another U-turn be on the way? Is nuclear energy the solution to the climate crisis? We explore how radioactive waste could be stored, and it involves going deep underground. And another protest from Just Stop Oil demanding an end to new government oil and gas licences. Hello and welcome to the Daily Climate Show, where we track the changes happening to our world and interrogate some of the potential solutions to the climate crisis. Now, we'll start today with the government's energy price guarantee, originally put in place for 2 years. Now, this was all to limit the price suppliers could charge you for the energy you use. Well, today, the new Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, announced that the price cap on our energy bills will only be in place until April next year. Now, I'm joined by Sky's climate change and energy correspondent Hannah Thomas-Peter. Thanks for joining us. So the first question then, where do we stand with the government's energy policy then?
Well, it was a bit of a blink and you'll miss it line, but in there, I think, was a real hint at what's about to happen. Jeremy Hunt said that the energy price guarantee will be better structured to better incentivise energy efficiency. And if you think about it, that's exactly the opposite of what Liz Truss wanted to do. You'll remember when she announced it the first time around, she steadfastly refused to ask the British public, or businesses for that matter, to use less energy. She was worried that that would impact growth. Well, at the time, campaigners, opposition MPs, even people within her own party were saying this is a tremendous missed opportunity. If you reduce demand, you're going to alleviate pressure on people's wallets, you're going to reduce the need for foreign energy imports, and you're also going to be able to do something about tackling climate change. Still, she refused, against the advice of her own climate change advisors, but now Jeremy Hunt has done the shifting for her, or appears to have done anyway. What we don't know is exactly what that will look like in the chaos of this particular political moment. Does Jeremy Hunt mean that actually what he's going to do is just wait for the price rises to impact people's use of energy and reduce it kind of organically? It's unlikely to mean an extra spending or of any description on, for example, a home insulation programme. But I think what certainly is in the Chancellor's mind is that he is going to need to keep the lights on this winter. And reducing energy demand is a good way to do that. And so we may yet see a government-backed energy savings programme aimed at the British public coming in the next few months.
So interesting. And also today, then, the First Minister was using this opportunity to talk about Scotland becoming independent from the UK, but also her aims for reliable, low-cost energy for Scotland.
Yeah, this is Nicola Sturgeon laying out what she said is her refreshed vision for the case for independence, and how to harness arguably Scotland's greatest asset, commercially speaking anyway, which is the North Sea. Have a listen to what she had to say.
Oil and gas is a declining asset, and our obligation to the planet means that we must move away from fossil fuels as quickly as possible. But oil and gas can't be switched off overnight, so Scotland could benefit from these revenues for some time yet. If we invest remaining oil revenues and use our new borrowing powers responsibly and for a purpose, we can invest up to £20 billion in the first decade of independence.
A not very veiled dig there at this government for failing to invest at the requisite scale and pace to really drive along the renewable energy transition. You know, I think Aberdeen might have something to say about suddenly becoming the net zero capital of the world. It might argue that there's already been plenty of work going into that particular project already. And I think the British government might also say, we have long had an ambition to become the Saudi Arabia of wind. There is plenty of ambition and scale at work in the North Sea, but it is a complicated project and they've had to move quite carefully.
Absolutely. Hannah, thank you so much. Fascinating. Thanks for keeping us up to date on that one. Well, let's take a look at some of the day's other climate news now. And Australia's Prime Minister has warned the situation in flood-hit areas of the country remains very dangerous. October is usually the start of wildfire season in New South Wales, Victoria and Tasmania, but instead they're enduring record and near-record flooding. So Victoria is the worst affected state, where 34,000 homes are at risk of becoming inundated or isolated.
There is further rain expected later this week, so it remains a very dangerous situation. There are over 100 Australian Defence Force personnel on the ground in Victoria, providing support with evacuations, with sandbagging, with some of the early stages of the clean-up.
Environmental protesters forced the M25 to close today after climbing up the Dartford Crossing Bridge. Essex police closed the road after two people from Just Stop Oil climbed the 84-metre-high masts. The closure caused more than 2-hour delays and they expected the bridge to be closed for some time. The group say they're demonstrating against new government oil and gas licences. New data has been released today to provide new insights into the public's recycling habits to mark the start of Recycling Week 2022. Now, the research found that people over the age of 55 are most clued up, whereas Generation Z were most confused when it comes to recycling, with glass being the #1 contaminant, with many households mistakenly adding old, broken drinking glasses to their recycling. Now, Scotland's national parks have entered into a £70 million deal to fund the restoration of damaged peatland by selling carbon credits to corporations. The new fund is being managed by private firm Revere with the aim of attracting private finance into nature restoration, and farmers and landowners can access the money to create a carbon credit business, turning poor or damaged peatland from a source of carbon dioxide into a carbon store. And finally, to a UK exclusive, we're talking nuclear energy. The UK government are keen on it as a solution to the energy crisis, but there are serious concerns about how the mounting volume of radioactive waste will be stored. Well, in Finland, the world's first nuclear necropolis for storing waste is taking shape 500 metres below ground. Sky News' science correspondent Thomas Moore travelled deep into the tunnels with the UK agency responsible for finding a solution. He sent this report.
On Finland's west coast, they've been generating nuclear power for more than 40 years, temporarily storing highly radioactive waste in shielded bunkers.
So we are going underground.
Now, for the first time anywhere in the world, they're going to bury it more than 400 metres underground. The bedrock is 1.9 billion years old, and studies suggest it's an ideal nuclear tomb.
The rock itself, like in the whole area in Finland, as in general, is very stable. We have old rock, we don't have continental plates, earthquakes, seismicity, things like that.
These tunnels will eventually stretch for 40 miles and hold 6,500 tonnes of spent nuclear fuel. Once full, they'll be backfilled and the whole complex sealed in while the radioactivity safely decays. This is being built to last 100,000 years. It is an extraordinary time span. Go back that long and it's a period of ice and mammoths and woolly rhinos, and modern humans hadn't even set foot in Europe. But that's the kind of timescale that's required when you're dealing with nuclear waste. The waste will be packed in double-layered metal canisters slotted into holes bored in the floor of the tunnels. They'll be swaddled in the same absorbent material that's used in cat litter, multiple barriers that are designed to keep radioactivity locked in.
We can look in if you come to this side.
The boss says such deep disposal is far safer than leaving nuclear waste on the surface.
On the surface, the interim storage needs active measures from humans. It needs to be, building needs to be heated, spent fuel must be cooled, there must be security around it. If you look at generation forward, you cannot really see that kind of an arrangement would be risk-free enough.
Experts from Britain and elsewhere are watching Finland's progress. 4 possible sites for burying the UK's waste have been shortlisted in Cumbria and Lincolnshire.
So we have 70 years worth of waste in the UK that's already accumulated from energy production, defence, industrial processes, and it's not going anywhere unless we do something with it. And we have to take action to make sure this is managed responsibly.
In Finland, winning over local people has been as important as the engineering. Yrjokki is just 10 miles away, but the nuclear industry is a big employer, and the mayor says support for the waste site is high.
They know nuclear and final disposal in this area much more than, for example, in the areas we doesn't have nuclear power plants. And that trust has developed during 4 decades.
Finland is decades ahead in finding a solution for its nuclear waste. There is a growing consensus that the 260,000 tonnes piled up worldwide can't be left for future generations to clean up. Thomas Moore, Sky News in Western Finland.
Well, with just 20 days until the United Nations Climate Change Conference in Egypt, how will we make the transition to net zero? It will certainly be on the agenda, of course, as the energy crisis continues. So scan the QR code on the screen now for your complete guide to COP27 in Egypt. Well, that's all from us today. We'll be back tomorrow. Bye.